Wastewater reclamation, item 15, which is a code text amendment relating to sanitary user fees, and ordinance 2015-6, and then item 16, which is ordinance 2015-34, amending the Pima County Code relating to connection fees. These are hearings. We have one speaker, Amber Smith. I have one speaker card. Anyone else in the audience is certainly at this point able to address us should they choose.
Good morning. Again, Amber Smith for Metropolitan Pima Alliance. This morning, I would like to recommend you not approve the user fees nor connection fees. As I mentioned earlier, we represent an organization about finding common ground and collaborating, and we believe at this time there is still more opportunity to try to resolve this budget gap experienced by the wastewater department. As part of that, I do serve on the advisory committee for RWRD, and so I'm intimately aware of these issues, and I respect the problem that they are encountering. So I do encourage the board to continue to push staff to find some creative solutions in resolving this issue. They are working hard already. I have received some extremely positive feedback from my members on the customer service that they've been providing, especially over the last 6 months. So I don't want there to be any solutions that jeopardize their ability to perform, but I also don't want to overburden users as well as the business community should some connection fees be increased. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address us on this item at this time? Is there anyone else? Mr. Huckleberry, any comments?
Madam Chair, the user fee increase of 3% is relatively modest compared to the Consumer Price Index, and that I think that you will either be facing modest increases, or if we continue to skip years, we'll face a larger increase in the future. So I think we would continue to recommend that the board consider both items.
All right. Any comments from board members?
Madam Chair, I have some questions.
Supervisor Miller.
One of the questions I have is on the 2015 financial plan. I'm looking at the draft from January 15. And on there is the operations and maintenance cost goes from $83.9 million to $98.1 million. And the 83.9 is 2015. And it goes up in 2019 to 98.1 million. That's a 17% increase in operations and maintenance costs. And my question is, why, with all of these, close to $1 billion of upgrades, haven't we achieved any efficiencies to actually cut back on operations and maintenance? Because I would assume right now with the condition of or previously with all the conditions, that we should be seeing a lower operations and maintenance costs as we implement this new upgrades.
Go ahead.
I assume that's for Jackson Jenkins, the wastewater director.
And I would concur with Supervisor Miller. With the new plants on board, we should see some decreased costs. So I'm sure that some of this may involve just rehab of existing structures and conveyance systems.
Chair Bronson and Supervisor Miller, that's not completely correct. Yes, we have state-of-the-art and very efficient operations, but we also are treating water to a much higher quality. One of the topics we've shared with you and some of the reports we prepared was the formation of struvite. Excuse me. Because we clean the water that much more than we have in the past, the solid stream, when it's dewatered, it builds a buildup in our system, and we have to add over $1 million or approximately $1 million of new chemical ferric chloride that we've never had to add before. And when you take a holistic view of these operations, really our O&M costs, just the plant O&M costs, in the report that we prepared back in March, on March 10th that we provided to the board, those costs are actually fairly stable, but there's other external costs that have added that number into the question that you posed. And a lot of that is just an assumption. I think it was a 4% inflationary type value that was added that gets it up to that $98 million.
You know, that is in direct conflict with an August 12th, 2014 memo from Mr. Huckleberry optimizing energy for wastewater. It says the energy cost to treat 1 million gallons of sewage has fallen from $450 per day to $250 per day, which amounts to that amounts to $200 per day savings. And that's per million gallons. How many million gallons do we treat in a day, and why is that in direct conflict with this memo?
The energy costs are less per million gallons. We treat approximately 60 million gallons a day. And again, that March 10th report that we prepared to the board, the electricity costs, it shows the reduction over time, and it's actually been a reducing value, but there are several different components that make up our budget, and electricity and energy has dropped, but the energy cost has dropped, but chemicals has gone up, the cost of our labor has gone up, you know, a number of other items that are putting us where we're at in the budget.
That's curious, because if we have this memo saying it's costing less to do the treatment, you're saying it's the energy has gone down, and I've heard that from you previously, but the cost for chemicals has gone up, and in this memo it's talking about specifically about treating the sewage. And if you look at what you just stated, if you treat 60 million gallons a day and you extrapolate that out over a year, that's a $4.5 million savings.
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, you know, I'm just trying to reconcile the difference between Mr. Huckleberry's memo about the treatment costs being much lower and what you're stating now. And I've got the memo here if you'd like to.
It's not the total treatment cost, it's just the energy component of the treatment cost.
The energy is lower, and then he talks specifically about the overall cost to treat 1 million gallons of sewage has fallen from $450 to $250. That's $200. That's significant. That cut it in half. And now you're telling us it's going up. These things aren't reconciling, and they're not making a lot of sense to me. I don't know about the rest of the board, but that's one real issue that I get. We're getting a lot of different information, and it is not, it's conflicting between the memos we got from Mr. Huckleberry and what you're stating now. And to follow up on that, why is labor costs increasing so much? With more efficient equipment and more efficient operations, I would expect we'd have less labor-intensive operations. When we automate, we have, I understand you have investment in capital for capital improvements and software, that kind of thing, but when you automate, I'm just real curious why the labor costs are going up.
When you look at the cost of our labor, there's been increases in salary over these past several years. There hasn't been many, but there has been some. The cost of benefits has gone up significantly. The cost of state retirement has gone up significantly. We've actually been dropping the number of total staff because of efficiencies, but it has not overall dropped the cost of labor. We're still on that upward trend. It has not offset those increases.
Have you done an analysis and considered cutting out some of the capital improvement projects that, and Mr. Huckleberry stated this in a previous memo, that is an option because not all of these are mandated by the federal government. Cutting some of the scope. I know the last time we were here you said that our capacity, we have a tremendous amount of excess capacity. That was from you, and I can't recall off the top of my head, but it was a huge number in residential hookups in the capacity for wastewater, and that's due to the downturn in growth, which we expect to be flat. Right. So the question is, since this growth is much less than projected, have you considered cutting any of these projects?
In our 5-year capital improvement program, we do not have any capacity increases in the treatment division. My reference back at that time was for treatment facilities. We have almost 95 million gallons per day of capacity for the 60 million gallons that we treat a day. But there are conveyance system lines that will continue to need augmentation. One big one that's being discussed here in recent times is the aerospace corridor that's augmentation, that's an increase in capacity, and that's in our budget right now.
And is that specifically for growth down there, or what is the growth projections out in that area? Are we expecting a tremendous increase in that?
These are lines that we have to, first of all, add the corridor, the aerospace corridor along the, over by Hughes Aircraft, or Raytheon, I'm sorry. And it's connected to several main interceptors, starting with the old Nogales interceptor and the southeast interceptor, and those all have to be augmented to handle more flow because they're very much full, those major pipelines. And all of that work is estimated to cost about $45 million in our capital budget.
Okay, and we had there's 60 million in the certificates of participation and 165 million of sewer revenue obligations that you're planning to issue out until 2019. Is there, and you're saying 45 million, it appears that's 15, 16 you have budgeted. Are you looking at cutting some of the out-year expenditures, or have you considered that?
We've gone through our entire capital budget, the 5-year plan. We've made a number of cuts to our budget, but there are still the items that are in the budget that have been identified as important and critical to maintain infrastructure and to plan for the growth, such as the aerospace corridor, are what's driving the cost, the need for these increases, because the debt service that goes along with capital has to be financed, and that's still going in an upward direction.
Okay, the rationale for this increase is that we need to keep the debt service ratio at 130% to keep our bond rating. And in order to maintain that ratio, the documentation we received says you need 22.3 million more in revenues. And the level of revenues will not be generated because anticipated growth is flat. And the question I have is, the Marana Wastewater plant was not in your original 5-year plan, and they purchased that for $18 million, plus you no longer have to upgrade that plant. What happened to that money?
I believe that the revenue, I thought it was closer to 16.5 million, but in that range, that went in as a revenue that helped pay for, a big part of it to help pay for ROMP, the $600 million project of ROMP that was regulatory mandated. And maybe Mr. Burke could add to that, as he's been very involved in that as well.
Madam Chair, Supervisor Miller, the money received from the town of Marana went to pay for the debt for the construction of the facility they took possession of. So it was, all the money was allocated to the debt existing for that facility.
How long had that facility been there? From my understanding, it was very old and aged. Is that correct, or?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Miller, there had been improvements done in the last 5 to 10 years.
How much debt did you have left on that?
Exactly the amount, it was calculated to the dollar amount of 16 million and some. That was the present value of the 18 million for the acquisition, and that money was all set aside to pay the debt.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Huckleberry?
Yes, Madam Chair. Let me kind of get in on some of these answers, because I think, the issue with Marana is fairly simple. It was 2 package plants that were packaged, put together, and then it was replaced with a new facility by Pima County, and then Marana wanted to take it over. And yes, the amount they paid is the exact amount that was left undepreciated, or not depreciated, the payments with regard to the debt service on approving that plan. In addition, Supervisor Miller, I'm trying to look at what you're getting your information from, because some of it doesn't jive with what I've got. And I don't know what page
I'm
you're
getting
on.
it from which question?
On operating and maintenance at 90, I think you said 91 million or 90.7.
Oh, that is from the finance. I got the page
Yeah,
number
I think-
right here. It's from the 2015 finance on page 4. And page 5 has a chart that shows it going from 83.9 million in 2015 up to 98.1 million. This is for operating and maintenance expense. And it's from the 2015 financial plan that was given to us by Wastewater.
Yes, Madam Chair, Supervisor Miller, does that chart look like, is that the chart we're dealing with? Yeah, it's probably pretty close. The chart I have has got that 98.1 is in about mid-year 2019. Does that sound right?
Yes, it was like
Okay.
a year. Yeah.
And what we're dealing with is back here on 2016, the budgeted O&M is 87.3, and that's in the budget. And if you then look at the growth, that's just simply a projection of growth, assuming utility increases, cost increases, labor increases. So these are all projections.
Right.
They're not real.
But he's basing the rate on these projections, correct? The rate increase, the calculation to come up with.
The rate increase is based on the short-term O&M expenses, and that's probably closer to the 87 to 90 range.
Then my question is, why would we have that going up $17 million in 4 years? That seems like a tremendous amount of increase, and it's 17% increase in 4 years' time when we've upgraded and doing all these improvements. That doesn't make sense to me. That it seems to me that you would have had some efficiencies built in.
Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, I think you have to dig into the details as to how you got to 98.1. And I think what you also, we're in this mode of where we've ended most of the capital expenditures associated with rehabilitation of the major plants and facilities. There's a line in the operating and maintenance budget that is what we call non-capital repair and maintenance. And my guess is that there's a significant additional burden in that area in the short term, because what we've been doing is basically concentrating in the previous years on replacing the capital that shows in the capital line areas and not the operating and maintenance, which is the small lines, the smaller repairs and things that get to be costly, and when you add them up, they can be several $1 million in any one given year.
Okay, could you send that to me, please? The next question is, there's a $12.1 million increase in consultant and outside services due to the privatization of the operations of the new Agua Nueva facility, which replaced the old Roger Road plant. And this is from that same report. What is driving these cost increases there?
Supervisor Miller, the largest cost increase is the privatization of the Agua Nueva wastewater treatment facility. That's, I believe, $6.5 million in outside services that we pay them to operate that facility. And we also have another large item that's outside services is our billing. I think we're paying around $4 million for Tucson Water and the other water companies to do our user fee billing for us.
Didn't we always use them to do our billing?
And this last year they went up, they raised their rates, all of them have.
That seems like a huge amount. Yeah, last year it was 7.9 million, and you're showing that it's going to go up to 12.1 million in consultant and outside services. And you said that was due to the privatization. So why did we not do that in-house if we were doing it more efficiently in-house?
Yeah, this was a very lengthy evaluation and discussion on how to deliver the Agua Nueva project. Design, build, operate as the delivery method was determined to be the most cost effective. And as a result, that's the method that we went with. And the project has saved tremendous amounts of money, so we believe it was a good decision. And that's where we're at right now.
It doesn't appear to me that it's saving money. It's adding additional to consultant and outside services, tremendous amount from what we were doing previously. But we'll move on here. Mr. Hubbard, did you want to add something?
Yes, Madam Chair, and I think we can get you the information, but I think you'll see that a 20 or 30% increase occurred just in simply the charges from the water utilities associated with the collection of our bills. We saw a tremendous increase in that cost from the city of Tucson this last year. It was 40%.
What is driving that?
Their decision to raise the cost transfer to the county.
Do we have options on that?
Madam Chair, it's always difficult. We have a fixed product that we send a bill out that only varies, it gets set in once a year, and so It's a matter of the efficiency and how you collect your fees. We probably have options, we've been looking at them over time, to whether we go to a fixed fee cost anyway, but I think that's something that will come back to the board later in this year with regard to whether there are options on fixed fees, and that we can save that cost associated with these billings, because it's a collection efficiency mechanism, and that's all it basically is.
Getting back to the ROMP, you talked about that originally budgeted for $720 million, and it's come in, now this is an April memo, you're expecting it to come in at $605 million. Is that still the case?
That's still the case, yes.
Okay, and I'm just curious why that isn't causing, a rate decrease actually, or at least having some impact, because that's almost $115 million that you didn't have to bind out.
Yes, Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, what it is, it's a projected total cost, and it's just the fact that we haven't had the bond yet. So these rate increases would be higher had we had the bond, that additional capital cost.
Okay, got that one already answered. As I look at this, the one thing that I never agreed on voting for was the $4.1 million building expansion for the University of Arizona building out there at the wastewater plant. And the most recent was the $1 million purchase of the Dodge Boulevard building to use for maintenance and repair of vehicles, conveyance, and for storage and a little bit of office space. And when you bought that for $1 million, you told me immediately you had to replace the roof, etc. And I don't know what the full cost. I would like to get that information of rehabbing that building to get it with office space and all of the things you needed. But the one thing that we did do, we invested $18 million in a facility that was to consolidate all of the repair and maintenance operations of our vehicles. And we spent, it was projected to be 14.5 million, and we spent 18, and we built a 20-bay facility that can take road graders and everything else, and it's a state-of-the-art LEED certified facility. And then we would go ahead and purchase a building for $1 million. That makes it very difficult for me to approve a rate increase for you when you're not cutting spending, and in this case, purchasing that building was not necessary in my opinion. We should have seen this continued downturn coming, and I question the need for the extent of the improvements in terms of capacity. We'll not likely see another boom in Pima County, not in the near future, that's for sure. And along with it, that windfall for Marana that I don't believe was in the original plan that I looked through, that should have caused some savings there as well. My suggestion is that you could do better by cutting your spending and stop all of the unnecessary purchases. Yeah, they're nice to have. I'm sure it makes life easier, but the whole point of building that $18 million facility that just came online in 2014 was to consolidate those operations. And if you read the Pima County online on that facility, it's about efficiencies, having people in one place, building a sense of community for the employees. And then we continue doing things like this after we consolidated, and now we're back to getting all these little operations, duplicating effort, duplicating employees, in my opinion, because you're going to have the staff there at the other facility, plus now you have to have people doing vehicle repairs. I just cannot continue to listen to the same rhetoric that our costs are too high and we have to increase taxes on the taxpayers and the ratepayers of Pima County. And with that, I will move to deny the ordinance number 2015-6 of the Pima County Board of Supervisors relating to wastewater. And I believe this is a public hearing, so I will close the public hearing.
And any discussion? Roll call.
Well, I did want to this, you know? Frankly, I think Ms. Miller has some good questions. And I'm really glad that Mr. Huckleberry was here to answer those questions, because I did not feel filled with confidence with the information that we received from our wastewater staff.
Roll call.
Supervisor Carroll?
Aye.
Supervisor Elias?
No.
Supervisor Miller?
No.
You mean yes?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We'd
Oh,
like
move to deny,
give
yes.
you a chance to change your
Yes.
vote.
Never mind.
Yeah, it's a yes, right?
When you make the motion, vote yes.
Thank you, Ray. I'm glad you clarified that for me.
It is a yes.
Thank you.
Supervisor Valdez?
No.
Chair Bronson?
Yes, motion carries.